Good morning or afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Mariela Salinas, and I'm a marketing specialist here at Educate 360. Welcome to today's webinar, Introduction to CompTIA Security Plus, presented by our fantastic technical instructor for today, Scott Rake. We are in Zoom for today's session, and we will be sharing a copy of this recording with you in an email after the webinar. We do encourage participation throughout the webinar, so please use the chat or the Q&A option for our short Q&A portion after the presentation. Educate 360 is so excited to present this webinar today. I will now hand it over to you, Scott.
Well, thank you very much. And again, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be in the world. As Mariella, sorry, my apologies. Mariella already kind of prefaced, this is a nice little introduction to the CompTIA Security Plus exam and certification. And it's a good opportunity to sort of get acquainted with sort of what it is, why it exists, and what some of the potential benefits are of putting yourself through the process. And I think from a security perspective, this is something that all of us can sort of reach out and directly connect to in terms of understanding the importance of why this exists and why this might be necessary. CompTIA is an industry recognized leader in education and certification. They've been around almost as long as the IT industry has been around. And they continue to be one of the bedrock foundations that we use to build and to validate our skill sets. So we'll go through pretty briefly. I'll try and keep this as short and sweet as possible, though that's not exactly my strong suit, so no promises. But we'll cover things like the purpose, importance, what it is, some of the key concepts, and what the certification can bring to the table, not just for you, but also your organizations as well. And I'll start this. As we already said, it's a sort of one of those bedrock certifications that's recognized globally as a way for us to be able to validate our skill sets. And it is, even with the Security Plus, it is still sort of considered that foundational knowledge and foundational skill set, which is incredibly necessary, especially if you plan on, specializing in the security space. This provides you with that foundational knowledge that it allows you to build a lot more successfully. But it also helps us understand, even just conceptually, what it is we're trying to achieve in our organization through our information security management processes and practices. It's essential for anybody who wants to advance their career, not just in the field of cybersecurity, but in IT in general. There's benefits for anybody working in the IT field to have this Security Plus certification, even if security is not going to be your primary focus or your area of specialization. Validates our knowledge and skills in securing our network systems and applications. And it helps us just sort of understand the landscape. And just to give you an idea, if you just, Forbes not long ago did an article or put out an article kind of outlining some cybersecurity statistics. And I think it's worth kind of looking at that just a little bit, or at least acknowledging it. We're not going to look at the Forbes article or anything like that, but there's been a 72% increase in cyber attacks just since 2021. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 350 million victims of some form or flavor of cyber attack. On average, data breaches and cyber attacks will cost organizations around $4.5 million for a single instance. That's the average. Um, and, uh, and so just to contextualize why having a fundamental knowledge of Security Plus can be beneficial, even if you're not operating in the security space as a specialty. Just so we can understand what the landscape looks like, what what types of threats and vulnerabilities we're actually faced with. Not only that, and I know this may not be the most attractive way to think about the cybersecurity, but we really do have to have an understanding of what type of target we might have on our back. How big is that target? How pronounced is it? And our goal in security is to shrink that our target on our back to as small of a cross section as possible. If we want to quote Monty Python, we're trying to protect or perfect the art of not being seen, that sort of thing. So that's why I feel very very firmly that the Security Plus is something that can benefit anybody that works in the IT industry. And to be honest, I would also say that it could benefit anybody that just comes into contact with our IT infrastructure. So this validates all the essential skills, and like I said, helps us establish a foundation that we might build off of later. And by virtue of being able to pass the exam, get that certification, it gives you sort of a paper trail that allows you to demonstrate that you have that level of competency in this area, that you understand what the security risks look like. You understand what types of threats and vulnerabilities are alive and well in the world around us at any given point. This can also in turn enhance career opportunities because organizations and businesses are very, very aware at how expensive security breaches can become. And so they're actively looking for stakeholders that can help set the stage in favor of their success instead of the success of those those who seek to attack us. Now, and it's kind of interesting. You mentioned with the proliferation of AI, does security certification make it more compelling? I would say absolutely. And that's also part of the reason why keeping current with our security knowledge becomes so important, because the threat landscape is such a highly fluid and dynamic environment that if we're not proactive at sort of maintaining those skills, then we'll be stuck in a pattern of protecting ourselves against yesterday's threats, leaving ourselves exposed to the new and sort of emerging threats that are making themselves available because of advancements in technology. And this is sort of the dance that we're engaged in the information security management space. As an attacker, right? I'm always trying to stay aware of vulnerabilities, weaknesses that might exist in common IT services, because I want to be able to exploit those. So our attackers are constantly staying up to date with newer technologies and emerging technologies and trends, looking for ways that those advancements will assist them in acting on their objectives. So as a security professional, it's incumbent upon us to do the same thing. We need to keep our security skill sets up to date and current so that we can become aware of those same vulnerabilities in order for us to be able to apply additional layers of security to kind of close those gaps in our armor off. And that in that way, it enhances our career opportunities and provides us with that foundation we need to build. It's much, much more challenging for us to be able to respond to these new and emerging threats that something like adversarial AI might represent. It's going to be challenging, period. It's nearly impossible if we don't build that solid foundation in the first place. It becomes more like Sisyphus trying to roll the boulder up the hill if we don't have that foundational knowledge to build on. And that's why I think CompTIA's Security Plus is more relevant now than it ever has been. And it can also help us maintain the type of threat profile, right? The target that we have on our back. We want that to be small enough where we can be comfortable with it. But like I said, we got to stay current so that we can manage and be able to protect ourselves against not just yesterday's threats, but fundamentally position ourselves so we have a better overall posture to be able to manage and handle the newer or emerging threats that are coming out. So the main things that you're going to talk about, it does run the gamut. It covers the full spectrum. Everything from understanding what threats, vulnerabilities, attacks, and risks are, but we also contextualize that in terms of like likelihood and probability. So we get into risk management a bit. We get into the underlying technologies that we're going to rely on or lean into to help us achieve the security posture that we're chasing. We will talk about architecture and design in the CompTIA classes, and this is kind of important. We're kind of jumping the gun just a little bit because we're in an interesting point in time with the Security Plus certification where we're transitioning from a relatively older version of the exam to something a little bit more current, the SY0-601 to 701. So the 701 has been revamped and updated to include more up-to-date, more modern technologies, more modern architectures. So it's going to be, it'll be a little bit more relevant in today's world, where we oftentimes find ourselves working in hybrid cloud and on-prem ecosystems. And so how do we achieve our desired security posture when we have ecosystems now that kind of break the mold from what we're used to, where a healthy percentage of your IT infrastructure could be deployed into a cloud service provider? We all of a sudden now have to be able to understand the security of the cloud, as well as, and by that we mean the security of our cloud service providers, whether that's Amazon, AWS, or Microsoft's Azure platform, or Google Cloud Platform, or one of the other myriad of CSPs or cloud service providers that exist out in the world. And we need to make sure that we evaluate the security of that environment as a part of our decision-making process in terms of choosing who to partner with. Once we've addressed that question, we need to be able to address the security of our services that we deploy in the cloud. Oftentimes you hear this communicated as both the security of the cloud and security in the cloud. So these new, the new 701 version of the course and of the certification will be focused a little bit more, I won't say focus necessarily, but it will definitely include some of those architectural and design elements that we need to be able to consider for more of a modern IT deployment. We'll also talk about identity and access management. You almost can't have a discussion about information security management without discussing IDAM, the identity and access management process, how we go about identifying who we are, proving our identity through some sort of authentication structure, and then based off of that authentication, determining what level of access we have, what types of rights and privileges. And we'll definitely get into cryptography and the whole public key infrastructure. This is actually, whenever I teach this course, it's probably my favorite aspect of it. And if I could encourage anybody in here to learn, to kind of build their understanding and knowledge of one specific element, it would be public key infrastructure, simply because so much of our other security solutions kind of ride on the back of PKI. They sort of stand on public key infrastructure's shoulders. So the better you understand that specific component, it can go a decent way in terms of like flattening out the learning curve for people to learn other aspects, how it's leveraged, for instance. So this we've sort of already talked about. It's globally recognized. We've kind of discussed how the way that technology is evolving and the way that our digital footprint is expanding, how that kind of creates the demand for people who have these skill sets, which will make you very marketable, not just within your organization already, but in the job market overall. And it is, especially, this is probably my favorite thing about the direction CompTIA is going in general, is that it's much more focused on practical solutions. And I like that. So, instead of focusing on legacy architecture and older ways of doing things, they're much more proactive in terms of keeping it up to date, so that the information that we're communicating, the knowledge you might gain, enable you to be effective right out of the gate. Depending on the industry you work in, this might actually be a matter of governance, matter of GRC, governance and risk management and compliance. For instance, the Department of Defense has mandated virtually anybody associated with the DoD that comes into contact with the IT infrastructure needs to have this Security Plus certification to validate they understand the risks associated with what they're doing. So it could be a matter of just compliance. Now, when you sign up and when you take one of our classes, you get access to not just a subject matter expert that might be able to flatten out the learning curve or make the process of understanding this material a little bit easier. You're also going to get lots of access to lots of other resources. So you'll have the stuff you would normally kind of expect, a textbook, access to hands-on activities, but you'll also get quizzes and practice exams. And I think that the types of resources that are being designed and being made available to kind of support you in this journey of getting that certification, it not only gives us a way to make sure we understand what's going to be covered on the exam and that we understand the material, but it gives us a way to sort of target that effort, so that if you've only got 30 minutes to spend studying, you know how to spend those 30 minutes so that you get the most bang for your buck from it. So the resources that are available through New Horizons and through CompTIA not only make it easier for us to learn the material, but they make it easier for us to know how to spend our time. And I think that is probably one of my favorite aspects of some of the new resources that are available that we're leveraging. And I don't know about you, I'm assuming most of you guys are going to be like me. If I have anything extra that I need to do in my day, I don't have a blank check worth of time, energy, or resources to be able to do it. So I really do need to know how to target the amount of time that I have available in a way that's going to give me the most benefit. And that's what our resources can really bring to the party, in my humble opinion. Now, what's covered? Pretty much everything we were talking about: governance, risk management, compliance. We'll definitely spend a good amount of time talking about how we're going to respond and recover from security incidents if and when they occur. We'll cover the traditional, like the traditional network security. We'll cover wireless security, which is still kind of in that whole traditional umbrella now. But we also incorporate cloud security and application security, not just security of the application that we're using, but security in our application development process. So how can we fundamentally create applications in a more secure way that reduces our risk profile? We will touch on IoT, Internet of Things, which in my mind is kind of a double-edged sword, to be honest, because with IoT, there's still a big portion of that whole idea where we don't know what we don't know yet. And so I'm glad that it's in there because it makes it part of the conversation. It puts it on our radar to be a little bit more aware of it be a little bit more discerning about how we leverage it or if we decide to leverage it. Uh, because cloud security is such an important part of our overall security posture. That's going to also mean we'll talk about security of our virtual environment, so virtual machines, both virtual servers, virtual workstations, like virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI, virtual applications that are oftentimes, if we're adopting more of a modern application development architecture, is going to rely on things like Docker to create loosely coupled microservices. We want to be able to deploy those in a secure way. So we'll have a nice thorough conversation about that. And my favorite, social engineering. I love this because if for no other reason, oftentimes just because of pop culture, we get sort of, I don't want to say indoctrinated, but we're sort of taught that hackers and cyber criminals uh, have this sort of elaborate knowledge that they've spent their entire life attaining, and they're using equipment that isn't typically available to the average individual. And so we can be almost lulled into a false sense of security, thinking that, well, we're not surely going to be exposed to that type of individual all that frequently. The reality is, you don't really need an abundance of skill and knowledge and high-tech equipment to be able to attack somebody's infrastructure. Social engineering is the easiest, the most low-tech, and the most widely utilized attack that a black hat hacker might leverage just so that they can get their foot in the door. And there's some pretty funny and sort of in a offbeat way entertaining stories and examples of how social engineering has been leveraged to cause a lot of damage. So we will spend a decent amount of time talking about some of those low tech ways so that people might identify vulnerabilities that they might later exploit. We'll spend a lot of time talking about that so everybody understands not just what social engineering is, but how to identify it, how to kind of zero in on it, because email is the most common sort of attack vector or methodology that a black hat or an attacker might use to kind of begin the attack process. A good portion, around 40% of malware, malicious software, is distributed through social engineering attacks and techniques. So it becomes really important for us to make sure that that becomes that topic becomes I don't want to say a central focus, but something we definitely flesh out very well. Now, there are lots of things that you can do beyond cybersecurity. Like I said, more advanced cybersecurity certifications, and we'll have I think we have a slide later on that will kind of highlight a few of the additional certifications you can get that can help you gain the type of specialization that you're looking for, whether that is specialist knowledge for secure application development or specialist knowledge for network architecture, cloud deployments, that sort of thing. Not only that, but this can complement other education that you might already possess, higher education, work experience. Now, specifically with continuing education, one of the things that I think is also a nice selling point, and this isn't exactly anything brand new, but CompTIA had back in 2011, 2012 timeframe. My mind gets a little fuzzy on the specific or exact date. CompTIA moved away from the lifetime certification. Up until that point, once you got a certification through CompTIA, it was valid forever. And so they did away with that back in like 2011, 2012. Nowadays, they have to be renewed every 3 years. Now, you don't have to sit down and take the exam every 3 years. You can maintain your certification through continuing education credits. And CompTIA's website is very helpful and really user friendly when it comes to understanding what qualifies as valid continuing education credits, and submitting them so that you can maintain it. But it becomes, especially in the security space, it becomes super important that we're always trying to stay up to speed in terms of what the latest threats and vulnerabilities are, so that we can make sure that we're able to maintain the type of security posture that we're looking for. Now, I kind of alluded to this earlier, but in July 31st, the SY0-601 exam is going to retire, and be formally replaced with the 701. Now, the 701's been available for quite a while now. I don't recall exactly when it came out. I want to say it was like November of 2023. But both exams are currently active until the end of July. But that's why the 701 has been updated with the latest trends, so that the latest specific tactics, techniques, and procedures that attackers are using to exploit vulnerabilities in our environments. But it also incorporates the latest tactics, techniques, and procedures for us to be able to apply better security, both in our traditional on-prem IT deployment, as well as cloud-based deployments and hybrid ecosystems. Hybrid just meaning that some aspect of our infrastructure is going to be in that traditional on-premises type of deployment, while some other aspect of our ecosystem will be deployed to the cloud. And so it incorporates newer security architectures that are kind of designed to address the unique concerns that we might have when we're in that operating in that type of an environment. Because where we are today, our workforce is largely disintegrated. So your coworkers might be scattered to the four winds. My boss lives in Ohio, and I live in New York City. And that's become almost the new normal, where it's not just the person that's in the office next to me, or the people that I work with in my little cubicle farm. Right now, my coworkers could be scattered all over the country. As long as you've got a high-speed internet connection and a stable machine, you might be able to be productive regardless of where you might be sitting in geography. So in that type of environment, we're going to need to make sure that we're using the latest and greatest options to help us make sure that we're able to operate in that new dynamic without introducing unnecessary levels of risk. Right, so this is very much, this 701 helps us get closer to answering that question of how do I find the type of solution that allows me to eat my cake and have it too? How can I benefit from the cloud-based architecture, which supports me and my mobility requirements without introducing unnecessary levels of risk? So there are lots of different exams. Some of these are, most all of them are going to touch on some element of security. The Security Plus is going to be almost target fixated on the security aspect of it. But in every other type of certification, they're at least going to touch on security. That just kind of reinforces, I think, the idea of how important a practical and pragmatic knowledge of security is, regardless of whether you're in the IT world or specializing in cybersecurity, or if you're the receptionist at an office. Everybody has a responsibility for security. Now, if security does end up becoming something that you want to specialize in, with CompTIA, you can take it beyond the foundational level of Security Plus by getting into the CYSA or the cybersecurity analyst, penetration testing, that sort of thing. And that will develop a much more detailed overall knowledge of the security of our security options in the security landscape, and sets the stage for even kind of moving beyond CompTIA and going into other certifications that are also focused in security. So it's a good starting point. There's plenty of room to grow and to grow your skill set within the CompTIA family of certifications. And it gives you the knowledge that you need to take it beyond that. So outside of that, that's about all I got as far as like the formal presentation goes. But let's go ahead and see if anybody has any questions that we might be able to field. And I see a couple of them in here real quick. So let me just look through this for a hot second. How would you become familiar with all of these in the best timely manner? That's a really difficult question to answer, simply because number one, everybody's going to be a little bit different. I know for me, it I don't know if this is me getting older or if it's a sign of stress or whatever, but I have noticed that over time I have to spend more quality time with material than I used to in order to really understand it and really say that I've learned it. So I might have to read something twice instead of getting it on the first go around. So I know even for me, the timetable involved for me to know something well enough to get certified on it is a little longer today than it was like 10 years ago. My general recommendation, so aside from, acknowledging that everybody's going to be a little bit different, have different learning styles, and will pick up some information faster than others, my general recommendation is this: however long the class is, that's how much time you want to take to study. So if it's a 5-day class, give yourself at least another 5 days of just studying on that material before you really start thinking about sitting down to take the exam. That's my sort of generalized recommendation. Hopefully that helps. You may find that you're able to, just with your own background and experience and the knowledge you kind of bring to the table when you start the class, that you might be able to get it done in half the time. But you might also find that it's going to take you a little extra time than that 5 days. So what I generally tell people is the voucher, when you're issued an exam voucher, that voucher is good for a year. And that's the only brick wall in terms of like timetable that you need to be overly concerned with. I do want to keep the amount of time between when I'm in class and when I sit down to take the exam. I want to try and keep that gap to a minimal as possible. Because the further you spend away from the academic aspects of the material, the easier it is to start to forget some of the nuance and some of the details that will help you out during the exam. Ben asked, with cryptology and identity management, are there known applications using blockchain tokenization for security and authentication controls? Yeah, that's actually probably one of the biggest use cases for blockchain aside from cryptocurrency. They can be used for authentication. They can be used for like online voting systems, things like that. So yeah, I know that there are plenty of use cases for using that sort of solution for authentication and access control. That's a good question there. They're going to be pretty similar. At a certain level, at least when you get into the traditional things, the primary differences between the 701 and the 601 is that the 701 will focus a bit more on the like security of the cloud, security in the cloud, understanding different cloud deployment models, and virtualization. But the majority, like public key infrastructure, cryptography, social engineering, risk management, all of those things are fairly, I don't want to call them static necessarily, but they don't change and evolve in a dramatic way where you would have to sort of reinvent the wheel in terms of learning it again. Does that make sense? Perfect. So yeah, if you're not able to make it by the end of July, first off, I would encourage you to try to make it so you don't have to, so it'd be a non-issue. But if you just can't, life happens, then the only thing you really would have to do is focus on the differences between, the things that have changed. And CompTIA is usually pretty transparent about the differences between what an older exam versus the new one. So you can even just focus on the CompTIA documentation that says, here are the things that are different in the 701, and here are the things that haven't been changed. They're usually really communicative about that. In comparison to project management certifications, Dave, um, the main thing, and this is where I think some of the real benefit of things like the Security Plus specifically, because like I said, even if you're not, formally, wow, I just went blurry. There we go. My webcam got tired of seeing me. So, um, but the even if you don't work in the IT field directly, you're not a network administrator or a server admin or a DBA or a help desk technician. Even if you work in, say, like PMO, project management office, program management, we can still benefit from these ideas because the threats, vulnerabilities, risks are going to be necessary for us to be able to assess and kind of suss out on any project that we're working on. So even though we may not be directly in the IT department, we're going to be working and living off of the services that our IT department are providing us, and we're going to be leveraging those as enablers for us to carry out the work necessary for a project that we're building, planning on deploying. So we can benefit from all of these same principles, maybe in a little bit more of an indirect way, but social engineering, um, understanding how security is established between two devices that need to talk to each other. That can help us work through that project in a more secure way.
Awesome. I just want to be very mindful of all of your time. So I think that we should definitely skedaddle out of here. But thank you so much for your incredible insights today, Scott. And if you have any more questions on the Security Plus certification, you can definitely go ahead and visit us at newhorizons.com. We will also be following up with you in an email after the webinar with a recording. So if you weren't able to attend the entire session, be on the lookout for a follow-up of the recording and also for any more information on the Security Plus course. So without further
And
ado,
I
I
hope to
will,
see
yeah,
some of you guys in one of my future Security Plus classes. We have a good time in there.
absolutely. We can learn a lot, especially before July 31st. So thank you all again so much for
Thank you
attending
guys. Thanks for
and
having me.
absolutely enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Bye.
Bye bye.